Hi, and welcome to another video by Jimthecarguy. Today we have a 2003, it's a Buick Park Avenue. We're going to be changing the front brake pads, the rotors, and the hardware kit as well. I'm going to show you what kind of tools you're going to need, and then what we're going to do to get this job done. It's a very simple job. If you just follow these directions, you're going to have a perfect brake job. So let's go up front. I'm going to show you what you're going to need, and then we're going to get started. Now, remember, the one thing is very, very important is when you take that rotor off, behind there's a hub on there. That hub has got to be clean. So you're going to have to clean off any kind of rust or any kind of debris that's on there. And it's imperative that that part is spotless, because pulsation is caused by a couple things. The rotor's warped, or below that there's rust on that hub assembly. So it's very important that you get all that rust out of there. So come on up front. I'm going to show you what tools you're going to need, and then we'll get started. Just an example of what kind of tools you're going to be needing. You're going to need something to clean off that rust underneath that hub, like I was telling you. A small pry bar or a screwdriver, a hook to hold the brake caliper up and out of the way when you're working, a file, maybe a scraper, some emery cloth. You're going to need some synthetic brake grease. You're going to need a new rotor, new hardware kit, which is where the brake pads fit into. It's imperative that these are replaced. And of course, a good quality set of brake pads. We're going to need a couple of ratchets. Sometimes they're fairly tight, so the longer the extension, the better. This is a breaker bar, and you can see I have my 15 millimeter laid out because I did the other side already and it was very tight. We're going to use the 15 millimeter on this ratchet here. Remember, the longer the extension, the better. This is good, but this you're going to break your coconuts trying to get it loose, because it's a short-handled ratchet. Now you're looking at this lug nut saying, what does this guy have this lug nut for? But I will, or this crown nut, I should say. But I'm going to show you what we're going to do with that once we start putting this job back together. First thing we're going to do, we're going to come in the back right over here with that pry bar. We're going to put it in through here, and we're going to push that piston. Let's get a light over here. We're going to push that piston all the way back into the bore as far as we can possibly go. Then we're going to come over here, and we're going to, let's hang this up here for a second. Then we're going to come in here, and we're going to take out that 15 millimeter there, and that 15 millimeter there. We're going to locate this caliper off to the side up in here someplace, just to get it out of our way. We're going to put the slide pins back in the same holes they came out of, because you're going to see one slide pin is different than the other slide pin. So that we're going to stick them back in the same hole so we don't forget where they go. After we do that, we're going to come down underneath here, and you're going to see another bolt down here. It's a 15 millimeter there, and there's also another 15 millimeter up underneath here as well. We're going to take those out, and then we're going to take the rotor off the car. Sounds easy, and it's really not that bad. If you just follow along, you'll see you can do this job. All right, so let's get started then. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our pry bar. We're going to put it in the back of the rotor right over here, and we're just going to keep slight pressure on it just to start to push that piston back in. Now we're going to get in the back right here. I'm going to bring you in and I'll show you what I'm doing actually. Now you see right here, after I made it slide back a little bit, now I can get my screwdriver in, my pry bar right in here, and push that piston back in the rest of the way. So let's do that. Okay, now we have that piston pushed all the way back in as far as it can go. Let's get a light down here so you can see a little better. You see that piston is now pushed in as far as it can go. We're just going to see if it's in, make sure. Now that that piston is back in as far as it can go right there, we're going to check these slide pins to make sure that they slide the way they're supposed to, and you just do that by pulling it back and forth. And as you can see, they slide nice and freely. So we know our slide pins are in good condition. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to take out that 15 millimeter and that 15 millimeter. Now the best thing to do is to not take the slide pins out all the way. You want to remove the both of them first, or loosen both of them first before you try before you take one out. You want to make sure you have the other one broken loose. Otherwise, if this bottom one was out and you're trying to twist this, I'll show you what happens. If you were to get on this now, this whole caliper assembly would pull right up like that, so it would make it a little more difficult. So you break them both loose before you take them out totally. Now remember what I told you about these pins have to go back in the same hole because they're different. I'm going to show you the difference. Hi Tony. You see this one has got that rubber on top, and this one does not. So it's important that they go back in the same places that they came out. I'm going to take this out like this for now, and just put it back in here like this, and this one back in there like that. We're going to take our hook that we have now, take this up, and we're going to hang it up and out of the way, so that way it doesn't interfere with what we're doing down underneath here. Okay? All right. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take out those 15 millimeter bolts that hold the, I'll bring it in, I'll show you. That 15 millimeter bolt right there, and that 15 millimeter bolt right there, so we could take this mounting bracket here off the car. Now this is a little bit tight, so I am going to use a breaker bar on here. Now obviously if you have air, you can shoot it with the air gun. Now these bolts, they are torqued on. I will give you the torque specs a little later. And again, you take the loosen both of them before you take one totally out. You want to loosen both of them. I'm just going to put this on the side, and we will come back to this later. Now you can see this rotor is on there and it's rusted on there. There's a tool we have made by OTC that we put on the side and we can pull it to pop it off. I'm going to try hitting it with the hammer first and we'll see how that works. If that don't work, then we're going to grab our tool by OTC. As you can see, it did come off, okay? Okay, now, remember what I told you about that rust on here? You see how rusted this is in here? It's imperative that all of that rust is cleaned off. So like I said before, you can get in here with a scraper such as this and clean it off. You can get in here with a file and clean it off. Or you can get in here with a wire brush and clean it off, whatever works for you. Or you can even get in here with sandpaper or emery cloth to clean it off if you had to. All right, so let me clean this up right here, and then we'll grab our new stuff, and we'll come right back. Okay, now that we have everything cleaned up, we just put our rotor back on the top like this. Remember that nut that I told you? That nut goes on here like that. And you screw a lug nut over the top of it like this, and it holds the rotor in place while you're working. You don't have to worry about it falling or moving or whatever. All right, Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about this caliper mounting bracket. We're going to pull off the brake pads like this and like this. And then we're going to take these pieces off here. This is the hardware. So we just take these off, and these are trash. Same thing here. They just pull right off. Now, if there's a lot of rust up in this area right here, you'll need to clean it off with the file such as this to clean it off here, and the same thing over here. But as you can see, these are actually not too bad. So we're just going to bring these over to the wire wheel, and we're going to clean these up with the wire wheel. So let me clean these up, and then we'll come right back. Okay, now that we have it cleaned up, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a little bit of the synthetic grease that we have here, and we're just going to put it up on here where the mounting bracket is going to go. And then we take our mounting bracket, put it over the top just like that, and you push it, and it snaps right in place just like that. Same thing on here. Now, if you're not going to change this hardware here, you want to make sure that it's spotless, but I don't recommend doing a brake job without changing this hardware, because you are going to wind up with some kind of binding taking place. All right, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take out these slide pins that we previously loosened up, like this. We're going to take our rag that has brake cleaner on it, and we're going to clean it off just like this. We're going to put a little bit of grease on here. You don't have to put a lot, just a little bit, just like that. And then we're going to put it right back in the same location that it came out of. And then we're going to do the exact same thing on this one, because as you remember, these are different. This has the rubber on it, right? So our rag with the brake cleaner on it, clean off all that old grease that's on there. All right, and we're going to put a little bit of grease back on here. You don't need a whole bunch, you just need a little bit. We're going to put a little bit on the end right here. You don't want to put it on this end over here, on this end, because when you try to push this back in, if you have grease on this end over here, and you push it back into this hole here, it's going to wind up pushing in. It's going to give you air, like an air pocket in there, and it's going to wind up pushing back. All right, it just goes right in just like that. Now, I always use some synthetic grease on the area where the brake pads are going to touch, just like this, just a little bit. You don't need a lot of it. Oh, let me just talk about this for a second here. Now you see, this brake pad here, this is the old one obviously. You see this right here? This is the outer brake pad. You can see right here that the outer brake pad is the one that had the indicator on it, and it's in this location. If this was the one for the other side, that indicator would be on this portion over here. But this is where the indicator is supposed to be mounted. So we know it's the outside because we can see right there, and we know that one was the inside. So what I always do is I always put the pads on before I put the caliper bracket back on. It's a little bit easier doing it here versus in the car, but whatever works for you. All right. Okay, so now we have it mounted up like this. We take this and put it onto the car exactly as it came off. And then we squeeze our brake pads together. And then we catch both of our bolts in the back. Before we tighten one of them up, we make sure they're both caught. Otherwise, if you tighten up one and this is pulled out just a little bit like that, this bolt will not go in. All right, so make sure both of them are caught first before you tighten up one or the other. Next thing we're going to do now, we're going to take our caliper off. We're going to put this off to the side, of course. And now every place that the brake pad is going to touch, like here and here and here, we're going to put a little bit of silicone on everything, just like that. Right? All right, hold that thought. So I'm going to It's a pain in the rear end, all these telemarketers. Okay, so now we're going to take our bolt out. Remember, this is the one that had the rubber on it. That's the one up on the top. This one is the one on the bottom. We're going to take our caliper, put it over the top, slide it over the brake pads. And now what you're going to do too is this little rubber piece up on top, you have to make sure that you push it so that the pin can fit through. Like that. And then we're going to do the exact same thing on the bottom one. We're going to move that rubber. We're going to put our caliper bolts in. And then we're going to tighten both of them up. And again, I'll give you the torque specs as soon as I look it up. That's another telemarketer. You believe this? All day long, that's all we get is these telemarketers. It's horrible. On your cell phone or on the shop phone, the telemarketers are nothing but a pain in the rear end. Okay, so we will torque these down to the proper specs as soon as I look them up, but I'm a little greasy as you can see. But let's just go over exactly what we did, and this job is done. Okay, now we cleaned up underneath here where the rotor fits onto. We made sure it's nice and clean, all the rust is gone. We secured our rotor back on. We put our mounting bracket back on. We tightened up our bolts here and the one down on the bottom over here. We put our new bolts through here and tightened this one up and this one up. We changed the mounting hardware. We lubricated every place that the brake pad is going to touch, as well as on this mounting bracket here and the piston back there. That's it. We're done. Okay, so you can see it's really not that bad. The main thing is that you make sure you change that hardware kit. Is very important. The kit's fairly inexpensive, but you definitely want to make sure you change it. All right, we make sure everything is tight. We're going to get in the car now. Before we do anything, we're going to go in there. We're going to step on the brake pad, the brake pedal. What's going to happen is the brake pedal is going to go to the floor. It's going to go to the floor probably 2 or 3 times, and as you're pumping it, you're going to notice the pedal comes up higher. What you're doing is you're actually pushing that brake piston back out so that that brake piston comes in contact with the brake pad. And once you do that, then you put your wheels on and torque everything, of course, and you're out the door. All right, as always, thanks for watching. See you guys on the next one.